Vision, it starts with inspiration. Inspiration is, in my experience and what I've seen be effective, it starts with data, consumer research, market trends. And it's all of those things happening at once. You pull together an inspiration that leads to a vision.
Tricia, thank you for being with us. It's such a pleasure to have you. And this has just been neat to prepare for this conversation. I feel like I've learned so much already, so I'm excited to invite our audience to listen in. Transformation is a buzzword that we're going to unpack. And I know that you've been part of leading brands through various aspects of transformation and brands across different industries and at different stages of their own growth. And so I want to understand, if you would start with your definition. What does that even mean? And why is that a passion topic, if you will, that you've anchored your career in now going forward?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you, Bethany, for inviting me to be here. It's really nice and get a chance to talk marketing and business transformation with your viewers. So I would say, yeah, transformation is definitely a buzzword. I mean, transformation can come in many different forms, right? Could be repositioning a brand. It could be taking a new business into a completely different industry. It could be taking something that started as one type of product or service, but the marketplace is saying it needs to go in a different direction, right? Because the consumer at the end of the day drives everything. So transformation is starting literally from one point, knowing where you need to go, and then getting there. Now, the one thing I would absolutely say is transformation is continuous. It is not something that you start and stop, because we don't even work that way, right? We actually are our own products of transformation. Mm-hmm. So how do you know you're on the right track? How do you know you're actually transforming? It's very much like business planning, right? First, you start with, what am I trying to accomplish, right? What does the business need? And you start first with listening to the consumer, doing your research, understanding the market trends. And then you pull your group together and you map out, well, what's the vision? That's transformation, right? Where are we trying to go and why? Always grounded on what are the key things that the consumer is telling you that they want. Sometimes you have to dig even a little deeper to really understand what they need. But then you create, I mean, we all talk KPIs, right? Mm-hmm. But essentially what those are milestones that you're going to map along the way to make sure that you're hitting the key things that are registering to the consumer, right? Are they buying? They're voting at the end of the day. Then you get under the covers a little bit more. Are you actually expanding market share for the viewers? They know all this, right? I think the buzzword around transformation is, in our marketplace today, everything is changing so fast. Yeah. And transformation literally is becoming something new. I mean, e-commerce, think about how that came about. Really, e-commerce, not overnight, that's exaggerating. But the way consumers shopped literally changed. It transformed, never to go back the same way again. So that was transformation. Finding different ways and different means to transform can come in many different ways. So buzzword wise, I think it's really making sure that you as a leader understand in your business what you're trying to accomplish. Okay. If you want to use the word transformation, that means because you're literally taking it from a different type of positioning or a different market and moving it into a new area.
What's interesting to me about the uniqueness of your career background is you've served at brands at Bicycle, Wrangler, Calvin Klein, Hanes. These are not small entities. They're household names. And a lot of these have been around for generations. They've been through many rounds of and versions of transformation, if you will. Your seat on the bus was typically in a marketing function, but it was a unique remit in a lot of ways. I want to understand, how your passion for transformation was born in your perspective of marketing, but you were tasked with really being a general manager in a lot of ways. So tell me about that, where the lines are and how your perspective shaped your view now that you just shared with us on transformation.
It's really interesting. I had the opportunity to be with an organization, I think it was around 12 years, but it was an organization that was structured very differently. Okay. If you look at, generally, I was in the marketing group for well over 15 years. But marketing, in the sense of what we were responsible for, we would call it the hub of the wheel. Okay. So what marketers were responsible for was literally visioning the business, where it needed to go, how was it going to grow, and making sure all the functional areas understood. Typically, when you talk about, someone says, what do you do? And you say, well, I'm in marketing. They think you're developing advertising campaigns, right? Or you're doing social media. That is absolutely marketing. But real marketing in the sense of the word is like what a CMO does, right? They understand the strategy that a brand needs to take on its shape based off of what consumers are saying, what the positioning of the brand is, and then formulating that and making sure that the entire organization is going in the same direction. It's interesting because you think about that was, I don't want to date myself, but that was a few years ago, way before the time that you look at organizations now, they're much more integrated. I think that their approach was great because it allowed people to come through marketing and understand the marketing disciplines, but really learn how to manage and transform a business. So that's why transformation, every single, either it was a brand or a category that I had the opportunity to either serve or lead, we were always listening to the consumer and understanding where they were going so that we could continue to take that business in that direction.
So interesting. And as you consider the future marketing leader, if you will, the future marketing executive at the table, the lines become a little more blurry than they used to be, where you have a CRO, a chief revenue officer at the table, you have a CMO. There's definitely different functions, but the priorities of a marketing leader nowadays have evolved. They have to have evolved because of the way that, to your point, marketing drives every business forward in a way that maybe you gave the example of how you didn't name the name, but how the brand that you were at the time was innovative when you were there to have marketing at the hub of the wheel. But now it's pretty much every business they don't have an option because of the way that our world exists now. Marketing does drive every business forward in a way that it didn't used to. So I just wanted to call that out. I think it's interesting. And how would you say, what would those priorities need to be for a marketing executive now, even more than ever?
That's a really good question. Having a diverse background, having a portfolio that spans across different disciplines, industries, different brands, is going to broaden your experiences and your perspective as a marketer, right? Every organization looks at marketing slightly different. I think you're spot on with that. But at the end of the day, who is responsible for making sure that the brand, whether it's the company name, because that's the brand, or it's a brand, a part of the portfolio, is truly steered in the right direction that is going to ultimately deliver the revenue that's what's expected. So one of the things that's interesting is a lot of times I think people think of CMOs as not necessarily tied to driving the revenue and delivering the profit, but they are. A seat at the table sitting next to, let's call it the chief revenue officer, they are partners because they need to be moving in the same direction. So your question, as a marketer, if you're thinking about what your next step is, do you try to continue to go the lines of marketing? I would take a step back and say, if you're a marketer, you're actually driving sales too. So you could absolutely take a sales path. If you're driving marketing, at least in the sense of how I was in my career in marketing seat, I was involved with product innovation, merchandising. So it allows you to expand your disciplines that all tie back to marketing. So I would say, take a leap, go into a new direction, a new industry that you have a passion about, because you're going to learn something that's only going to help you build and bring it back to your marketing.
You mentioned vision as the starting point for any transformation process. It's maybe an obvious thing to say, but it's a very significant thing to say as a starting point. If you're a leader coming in tasked with transformation, what does it look like to start with vision? How do you crystallize it? How do you then disperse it and inspire throughout every crevice of the organization, every person involved? And tell me about vision.
So vision, it starts with inspiration. Inspiration is, in my experience and what I've seen be effective, it starts with, again, data, consumer research, market trends. And it's all of those things happening at once. You pull together an inspiration that leads to a vision. Now, as a leader of the organization, whether it's a team or a company or a business, that is your role, is to map the vision, right? That's going to get to the end results, the financial results, the things that are expected from your shareholders or the board of directors, consumers. You pull your team together, and every single person in your team has a very specific discipline and function and expertise. For me, the experience has been in any organization that I've stepped into or a new business is I pull those people together and we start with, what do we know? What do we don't know? How does that fit with what they're telling us and where we need to go? Then every single person is collaborating and building into the vision together, critical to success. Because if you're as an individual, and I have, listen, I have had some very successful transformations and some ones that financially have been successful. But when I look back as a leader, they were probably going to be more effective and long lasting if it would have been more of a collaborative vision building.
Okay.
So that's a huge takeaway.
Huge.
That I would share and do with people that I work with today. Instill that it's a collaborative vision building. So once you get that vision in place, then every single person, at least the team that's built it, they can disseminate and speak to it in their functional language that they're in, right? Starting transformation starts with a vision. The vision then has to be translated into a strategic plan. And that's kind of what you were asking earlier, right? A strategic plan then becomes into your actions, your KPIs, your milestones. How are you tracking that you're actually delivering on the transformation? The other interesting thing about vision is I've been guilty of this. As I've learned, I've gone through different opening new markets, turning around businesses, working with different teams, because I'm very much a visionary leader. Sometimes it's in my head and I'm not doing a good enough job articulating what I see. So again, good vision is not just what one individual is seeing, but having everyone understand that. Okay, have we thought about this? Have we thought about that? And I know it sounds pretty simple, but most organizations, I don't think, take enough time to allow true collaboration, to true creative building. A vision is only a vision if it's not stated clearly that somebody can actually execute it. So we were talking earlier about organizational transformation. How do you do that? Every layer of the organization has to understand what it is, be able to articulate it and understand it and believe that they're a part of it. So that's where I think change agents come in. Right? So you can come into any type of business, whether it's a startup or a very mature business that needs to be tweaked slightly to go in a new direction. How do you convey that? You have to see it, read it, hear it. I think what the stat is 7 times to truly understand it and repeat it and believe it. Transformation, I think I said earlier, it's a continuous process, right? I think the stat is it takes truly 18 months to convey something from start to finish, just to even get an organization or a group to truly understand what we're trying to do.
Wow.
So then you have to start again. My perspective, it's vision is the catapult to transformation. And then it's about making sure that everyone in the organization clearly has a role, understands what it is, and has a part in making it happen.
So significant. And to your point, just that process of crystallizing the vision in a collaborative way and then translating it into how does that impact every single person in the organization is such a process in itself. And that's step 1 of the process, really. I also was reflecting as you were speaking about the emotions that are mixed into this process as well. I've heard it said, people don't like change. I heard a friend of mine the other day say, it's not that people don't like change. They don't like the anxiety that change brings. So if you can manage the anxiety of the collective anxiety of the whole, then you can usher in change. So that's the component we didn't talk about either, because you're not ever starting at a neutral place. There's always a backstory. If you come in as an executive leader and you're tasked with transformation of some kind, you're entering into a lot of narratives and momentum that's already been leading up to that moment, So it is important to collaborate and be mindful of the emotions that those who you are collaborating with are bringing to the table. And that's why, though, I think it's important because if you just come in and say, well, here's the vision, I'm the new leader, it's not going to work, is it? And it will knock it off the ground, frankly, and you'll probably be ushered out soon. So the nuances there of the people savvy skills that you have to actually usher in transformation is a piece of it that I wanted to just call out because I think it can make or break this process, right? Of transformation.
This episode of Listen Loudly is brought to you by Door Number 3, a growth marketing firm for challenger brands. Door Number 3 works with scale-up and enterprise-level brands who have a mandate to grow. We help them shift from accidental to intentional growth through performance media and brand development. If you need a growth strategy and execution partner, visit dn3austin.com or give us a call. We look forward to talking to you.
Your career, shifting gears a little bit, is so unique because of the diverse background you've had as a result of I call it the marriage of kind of the art and science that you hold. You have an artistic background that is super unique. I'd love to just hear how your diverse background and skill set has served you in being able to just fine-tune that business acumen and how you navigated that. It's not straightforward and it is complex, and you've done it with seeming ease, but how have you navigated
thank you, Bethany. I appreciate that. I'm a different type of leader. I think most leaders would say that about themselves, or business person or an individual, right? We're all very different. The way and the reason I'm different is because I have an art background, as you said, right? And I've come up through marketing, but then very much in a traditional business acumen. So I don't have an MBA. I do by working with Fortune 100 companies for the last, let's call it 20 years. It's navigating and understanding what makes you different as a strength. It takes some time, right? But I think leaders or people like myself, I want to encourage other people that have very non-traditional backgrounds that embrace their difference, because the more difference of perspectives, background, experience that you have at the table, the stronger you're going to be as a total group. That took me some time to figure that out. Because at first it was I actually thought it was going to be a disadvantage, financial acumen, but that's something you learn. That's something you can teach yourself. That's something that the experience that you have and the more questions that you ask, be inquisitive. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Be courageous, but also be gracious to people that may not understand, because we've all been in that same place. Sometimes I don't think in the business culture today, we are gracious enough to people and allow failure, allow mistakes, allow questions. So I try to have an environment like that, because I want that to be, let people be able to explore. So that's one way that I've navigated. The other thing that I would say is that with an art background, I visualize everything. So I'm a painter and a sculptor, and it's interesting. Everyone processes information differently. Some people process it visually. Some people process it through, audio. I'm very much visual. And so vision, I always start sketching things out in my head. I think that's a strength. But part of what I've had to learn is, even though I can see it in my head, I have to be able to explain it and articulate it to my team members, my colleagues, my peers. And then that's where the collaboration comes in. Again, understanding how you're different, embrace that you're different, learn the way that it's going to be the best to be the communicator so that your team can be as successful as they can be with you being a part of it.
Incredible. I relate to this on such a personal level. When we very first spoke, this was a theme that emerged as a singer. I grew up in a musical family. I didn't inherit a family business in the proper sense. I inherited a music ability from my family where we sit around and sing. So it took me years, though, to not put my own self in a box. And I think that's the fascinating thing that I'm taking from what you're saying, which is human nature is that we like to categorize things in people really quickly. Like, oh, well, you're a musician, so you go in that box, or you're an artist of some kind, so you go in this box. Like, it's separate. And the important thing is that you, as the person, don't view yourself in a box. And the ability to be fluent in different spaces is actually an incredible benefit. And you cross-pollinate, if you will, the world with your strengths and move in and out of even industries. I think that's, to use a business analogy, I think it's common to get kind of pigeonholed into one space. And, if your resume says I spent all my time in this one industry, then therefore that's the only space I can continue in for the rest of my career. Nope. It's actually up to you to continue to reinvent, to continue to take those strengths and package them. But to your point, it's on you as well to articulate and be able to bring others into that vision that you have. So I'm taking notes.
One thing that you sparked a thought, you talked earlier about change, and a lot of times it's scary, right? And I think it's most people when they hear change, it's like, right? Because it's the fear of the unknown. And that's where the communication comes in. Because once you really understand what that change is going to look like, you can start to process it and start to put yourself in the middle of that change. And before you know it, you're adapting to it, right?
Yeah.
And you're becoming a part of the change.
Yeah.
And it turns from a fear to a positive activity.
Yes.
So I would encourage, and this is something, and I encourage my children, I encourage my friends, it's a muscle. Change, and that ability to be able to change without that fear, it's a muscle you have to practice. So the more that you experience new things, or pick up a new hobby, or do decide, okay, I've got this great talent, and yes, I'm in this field, but there's no reason why I can't do this, right? Change is not necessarily about changing a job or changing where I live. You can make small things in change by just adding new things that you do in your own life. And so change is an important skill set to be able to understand and manage in your own life, because one of the things that I've learned is change is inevitable and you have to be able to pivot and adapt. So again, back to vision. If you have a vision for your own personal life and you know where you want to go, and then all of a sudden someone comes into your life for whatever reason and change happens, then you can pivot and you can adapt because you already know where you want to go.
Well, speaking of change and this openness to how things evolve, I would love to hear your perspective on AI as it relates to driving business transformation, of course, with the lens of marketing, but you have such a unique POV on this. I want to make sure we get to capture that and hear how you see those pieces fitting together.
I love technology.
Yeah.
I embrace anything that we can do that's going to be additive to our life. And again, give us a new a skill set. But at the end of the day, people drive results. People drive results. Let's say it again. Technology and process aid in progress. You have to embrace AI and learn it and be a part of it, because if not, you will be left behind. That's just inevitable. Again, transformation and change are inevitable and they're constant. But what is always will be constant are people. Us being able to have this conversation and then AI being able to maybe, accentuate and do some different things with it, right? Or digital technology, how we actually communicate content now has changed. But being able to have this conversation, that's where it all starts. So I know a lot of people think it's technology leads and then people have to adapt and come on board. Okay, yeah. But at the end of the day, it's the person and the people on the team that actually deliver the tangible results. It's simplistic, but I like to remind myself that I have to continue to learn new skill sets. But at the end of the day, no one's ever going to replace this type of dialogue.
It's not simplistic in the way that it is simple. It's actually boiling down a lot of complexity in a way that just connects the dots for me of that. The flesh and blood of the human, is how do these relate together? I hear it yesterday, even in an interview with another podcast interviewee, we were talking about CAN and the buzz around AI and all of this. And I love that you delivered a answer in such a concise way, because the point is people drive results and all of the technology is there to support, but it's the humans that are ultimately in the front and behind of the technology that's then facilitating humans. Interesting. So Tricia, you are in a new chapter of your career, and I want to hear what you're up to. What's fueling you right now? When you wake up in the morning, what are you most energized about, and what mark do you want to leave on the world?
That's a great question, and that's what I've been thinking about and doing for the past several months. It's no surprise. I continue on the same kind of passion. It is about helping others drive change and transformation. It's interesting. I'm currently working with a couple startups as well as a new partnership of us working with PE firms, startups, entrepreneurs, even mid-cap companies that are in the midst of transformation and change. I like to spend my time helping others see the results that they want to have in their business or their lives. Now, a lot of times what I'm finding is that whether it's an individual, it's about their own life, their own brand, or their startup or their existing business, they don't have a vision. They might have an idea where they want to go and why, but they haven't articulated it and put it into a plan. And that's what I've been doing, right? And helping teams and businesses and companies do. And so now I feel like while I've enjoyed that and had a tremendous time working with phenomenal people, I like now working with individuals and smaller companies because I feel like I can make a bigger impact that way.
And we were chatting about challenger brands as well, kind of that niche that you find yourself in some ways. Door number 3, we have put our stake in the ground as serving challenger brands. A lot of your work, a handful of the clients that you support and can support would fit that category, but just appreciate you being with us. I'm excited about what you're doing. We'll also have your LinkedIn in the description for this episode. And so anybody watching, as you're tasked with leading transformation and navigating change, I hope that you have found some nuggets in here of how to personally stay open to change, establish the clarity of that vision for yourself, and then disseminating it among your team. And then also just guiding your team through that process that can be painful at times, but is worth it. So thank you, Tricia. We're thrilled to have you with us.
Thank you.